Good morning, friends.
Good morning.
I would like to welcome you all to this 30th Layman and Housing Series lecture series. It is organized by the Rotary Club of Bombay West. For those of you who are not aware, Rotary is an international organization. We have 1.2 million members worldwide. Here, of course, in Mumbai, we are located in various regions. Our particular club is located in Juhu, right around the corner, as we call it. It is near that SNDT college, and we do a lot of work. This is part of our social outreach, as a matter of fact, where we are trying to educate people about issues that are important to them. If there are any other topics that you feel we should expound knowledge on, please let us know. We'll be happy to organize seminars. For example, today's topic is about the revised tenancy laws, which are going to affect all of us directly or indirectly pretty soon. We have been organizing stuff about structural audits, various things related to the building industry as part of this particular series. We also have our medical center right at the Rotary Center. Blessed to have our own meeting. So, if you need any more information, please do come and get in touch with us. On the seminar link, you will have Hiralal Sutarji's number or our Rotary numbers. Please let us know if you need any help in any particular social cause. So with that, I would like to throw the floor open and welcome all of you to this particular seminar. Thank you. Anandji, would you like to add something since this was started in your time as when you were president of our Rotary Club?
No. I would like to only add one thing, that as you know, Rotary is meant for all community service. So this, as a part of our community service, we have started this lecture series during my presidency time, and I am happy that today is the 30th continuous month it is going on. So to all of them, our well-wisher and all our friends, I would like to make only one request, that any subject which they feel is more concerning to all general public or all the cooperative societies, so feel free to advise us, and we'll be too happy to invite a expert on that subject and to educate people. And even today's subject is very important, particularly our all people who are staying in JVPD and this kind of areas where the tenancy is on a forefront for every second house. I am sure this will go a long way and connect our Rotary to common man. Thank you.
Vipulji, as one of our speakers, eminent speakers, do you have any suggestion that you would like to share with us in which we can reach more people with this or other topics that you might have, that you are aware of?
No, it is excellent move which Rotary is taking, and mainly the people who are participating. Generally we have seen a good number of participants, and this is the forum where you can share your knowledge and educate people. So I think it is very well done, very well organized also, and I would say that it is a really professionally managed group that it has been conducting regularly so many meetings, and I really feel very good. It is the 30th meeting today. Really
Dr. Manoj Patel, our president, has joined, and so has Ramesh Prabhuji has joined.
Vipulji, just think this is all done by pure volunteers. We are all doing it out of love of social service. So
really excellent.
We appreciate your time and experts such as you all come and grace this occasion. But so.
No, it is our privilege that you consider us, that we can come and share our knowledge. It is really a good thing. Really.
So thank you. I welcome Manoj Patelji. He's our president for this year.
Hi, Gautam Aslam.
Hi.
Hello, Vipul sir. How are you?
All right. So I think Ramesh Prabhuji has also joined. So I turn the floor over to Aslam to conduct it further.
Welcome, Rameshji. Your audio is not working.
I think it is working. Good morning.
Yeah. Now
good morning, Manoj bhai. Good morning, Ramesh bhai.
Good morning, Shiral bhai.
Okay. Good morning to everybody. May I request our Vice President Dharmendra to please introduce the guest speakers?
I think Siddhant is going to introduce.
Siddhant is to do that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Somewhere.
Siddhant, go ahead.
Okay. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 30th Layman and Housing Law Seminar. So, today we have two eminent speakers with us who are going to talk about the tenancy laws. Our first speaker for the day is Rotarian Hiralal Sutar. He's an advocate and graduate in law from the Government Law College in the year 1981. He has independent practice of law since 1982, and his core competence is related to the law of cooperative societies and properties and succession law. He keeps conducting free training courses for members of the managing committee in cooperative societies. He's been a very active Rotarian and has successfully been conducted and spearheading this initiative of conducting these layman education seminars since July 2018. Welcome Hiralal ji, and the floor is all yours.
Before Hiralal ji starts his presentation, may I request Dr. Manoj Patel, our president, to say a few words? Dr. Manoj?
Thank you, Aslam.
Yeah, please.
It's a very pleasant thing to see the series, Layman and Housing series, going on for such a long time with good success. Rotarian Hiralal Bhai Sutar, Anand Gupta, Ramesh Prabhuji, all have been taking keen interest in all this series. Today, I welcome today's speakers, Advocate Vipul Shah, Shri Ramesh Prabhu, Shri Hiralal Sutar, and I have all the best for this scene. Many times I have seen the attendance in this is huge. I think this is a success because everybody wants to know the laws, which most of us don't know. It's only in the purview of the advocates. So I think let us be more knowledgeable with today's eminent speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Manoj. Ramesh ji, would you like to talk about this the webinar series that we are having since July 2018 and talk about today's topic also?
Yeah. Thank you, Aslam ji. Dr. Manoj Patel, the president of the Bombay West Rotary Club, of course, our star speaker of the day, Advocate Vipul Shah, as well as Hiralal Sutar. We have been doing this program for the last 30 months, and I think it has been a great success, as has been pointed out already. And of course, Anand Gupta has been an instrument in starting this about 3 years back. And continuously we are doing, and I think every month, one or the other new topic related to the layman, or especially of the law which is affecting the common man, we are discussing. Today is a very good subject that we have taken up. Though the tenancy, of course, in Mumbai, it is popularly known as Pagdi system, but it is definitely need to take certain turn after Rent Control Act 1999. I think this is the time wherein some drastic change is required across India, and this law will bring definitely the redressal methodologies as well as the obligations of each parties. And I think it is going to be adopted by entire state and rather all over India. So with this, I think in detail, we'll hear Advocate Vipul Shah. Thank you very much, Aslam Bhai, for giving me this opportunity. Wish you all the best.
Thank you, Ramesh ji. Thank you so much. Hiral ji, I'll mute everybody now, but you will be able to unmute yourself and start the proceedings.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, unmute yourself. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, friends. As far as today's topic is concerned, friends, before I come to the topic, let us once again welcome all the participants, my president, vice president, president-elect, for joining. Friends, this particular model law, if you see the history and the legal position, the draft is given by the central government because the domain, the property and the land are the state subjects, and therefore, unless and until the state governments adopt this law, it will not be applicable to at that particular state or particular union territory. I will straightforward go to sharing my screen of the presentation. This is the analysis of the draft provisions. Now, in the process of analysis, we need to understand, to start with the object of the provision. What is the present state of the laws relating to the controlling of the rent and the tenancies? What is the mechanism within these subjective provisions of the law and the mechanism for dispute redressal? As far as the dispute redressal is concerned, friends, Advocate Vipul, my co-speaker, is going to give detailed submission, a presentation in that regard. I'll straightforward go to the I will, as I said, I will be looking into object, the present law, the provisions of the current draft rule, dispute redressal will be seen by Vipul, present tenancies, present live-in license, and the leases and the Transfer Property Act are the main topic which I'll be covering in scope of next 25 minutes. Directly coming to the object, friends, as we know, the object is to establish an authority which will be called rent authority, with the intention to balance the interests of the landowner and the tenant, so that the entire industry, the rent industry, which is not there in our country, in the Western countries and the European countries, entire industry is there for the renting out the premises. There are the rules and regulations. In our nation, so far there is no such segment duly developed, and therefore this law aims to develop that kind of entire industry in the market. The idea is to create an accountable and transparent environment for the landowners to have a trust, confidence, and for the tenants also to be more comfortable, because as of today, under the PAGRI system, we know what are the problems we are facing as a tenant. Apart from this, as we know, the present government, central government, has aimed to provide housing for all by 2022, that is 75th year of independence. These particular aspects of rented houses was not looked into by us. The previously our understanding was providing the housing for all means the ownership houses, but even the renting houses is also very important requirement. And by standardizing the available facilities of renting a properly designed and facilitated residential properties, the standard of living of the people will also be improved. Friends, before we go to the analysis of the law, let us have a look at present rent control provision. As the name suggests, the state is controlling authority. It is not the facilitating or regulating authority. That itself is a big obstacle in the development of the industry, because in spite of making almost market value by way of PAGRI, the tenant are at the mercy of the owner of the property. On the other hand, owners are also feeling insecure about availability of their place as and when required. The foremost is the dispute resolution mechanism is completely weak, because the parties have to go to the civil court. There is no special mechanism dedicated to this industry itself, like RERA. As we know, RERA, of course, it is in a nascent stage, but even then, as Ramesh Bhai suggested from time to time, that RERA is really evolving and it is going to deliver very good results. So this is the background of the requirement of the present law. Now, what in nutshell is the model tenancy law? Friends, there is no state control as far as the model law is concerned. It is absolutely based on contract between the parties, means the landowner and the tenant. I'll come to the premises which will be covered under this. But the foremost thing is there has to be compulsorily written agreement. Once the state governments enact the law, model law, as suggested by the central government without diluting its provisions, then it is going to prove boon for the entire new segment of the industry. The contractual obligations between the owner of the property, we call the premises owner or the landowners, and the tenants, is going to govern everything. There will be no government interference. Adjudicating authority will only adjudicate on the basis of the contract only. And these are beautiful aspects of the modern, this suggested law. Now, I would like to come to the premises. Which premises will be covered? To start with, first of all, unless we understand at what are the premises will be governed, the clarity will not be there. So all the private land, building and part of the building with garden, parking space close and the garages, these are the premises which will be governed under the law. And once this law is enacted in any state or union territory, nobody will be able to give their premises or the properties on rent without written agreement. We call it written contract. The moment this law is enacted, one of the sections of the new law says that the present Rent Act will be automatically repealed. There are the saving clauses which will be dealt with by my co-speaker as to what is the status of the current tenancies and leeway license and the leases and all these things. But suffice us to say for the time being that premises includes all those buildings. However, it specifically excludes the state government, central government and local government and their corporations ownership properties out of the purview of this law. Another properties which are out of the purview are the public charitable trust properties, religious and charitable purpose properties, then the companies and other organizations or the enterprises which have their own properties in the form of the residential premises, which are exclusively meant for residence of their staff, their employees, their workers, under the terms and conditions of the contract of employment. Those will also be out of the purview of this law. However, all these owners which have been specifically excluded have been given power under the Act to submit themselves to these provisions of this law by making an application to the rent authority. So this is the overall mechanism. Now the starting point is, as we know, like all government offices, there will be rent authority. If I compare it, currently the deputy registrar, assistant registrar in the office of cooperative society registrar, they are the departmental authorities. Here under this new law, it is called rent authority. They will be equivalent to those authorities. Then comes the rent control and the rent tribunal in the same hierarchy. Rent authority, above them rent court, and above them rent tribunal. This mechanism will be explained in detail by my co-speaker. The most important part, which will be a death nail to the corruption if properly implemented, is the digital platform has been made compulsorily. Within 3 months of establishment of the rent authority, in any platform has to be made ready, and the digital platform has to be in the language, vernacular language or the state language. So it will be widely available in the simple format to all the people of the state. Another important aspect is every rent agreement which will be submitted to the rent authority shall be given a unique number. Say for example, we as an individual get Aadhaar and PAN card. Likewise, every contract of renting shall be given unique identification number, and that number will be the very important number for person who has been given UIN to visit the digital platform to find various aspects, and at all stages, at the preliminary stage in the office of rent authority or at the appellate stage, this number will be the center point for identification. Another aspect, and rather very, very important, is compulsorily all the rent agreement have to be submitted to the rent authority. There is no exception for all those premises which are subject to provisions of this law. And let us understand that whatever terms and conditions mentioned in the agreement, a contract, are going to be the only evidence before the rent authority, rent control, and rent tribunal. That means the importance of the agreement or the contract of tenancy are not drafted properly. If that is happens under the new provision, then in absence of clarity, the Transfer Property Act and other provisions, and therefore it will be very important for the people to go for drafting to a level which avoids any kind of interpretation beyond the provisions of the Contract Act. Now we have to understand two terms. What is tenancy and what is rent? Now the tenancy is whenever there is an agreement for rent those property.
I think we have lost Hiral Sutar. So let's wait, he will rejoin. We are very sorry for this technical glitch. I'm just getting in touch with Hiral on telephone. Yeah, he has joined. Yeah, Hiralji. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So
share the screen again.
Yeah. Yeah, coming back, friends. Sorry for disturbance.
No issues. You are on. Slide number 5.
Yeah, I have to. Yes, slide number 5.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No. I think it is because of the.
No, next slide.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a slide number 3.
Go ahead.
Now we are on the topic of automatic demonstration of the tenancy. Am I audible? Yeah. Deem extension of the tenancy. Yeah. Now, if say for example, after extension of the tenancy, if the tenant does not vacate, then he will have to continue to pay the maintain the premises also, and he will have to pay the rent also. However, if he defaults beyond the period of 6 months of the deemed tenancy, then the consequences of that will be extremely heavy for the tenant, and that is guaranteed to the owner of the property that his property is safe and will be vacated, and the court, the authority, the court and the tribunal will interfere. Now, what are those consequences? For the first 2 months, the tenant will have to pay double the rent agreed upon between the owner and the tenant in the contract of tenancy rent. And after 2 months, the tenant has to pay 4 times the rent. Say, for example, the rent for 2-bedroom kitchen hall property in the western suburb near Andheri is 45 or 50,000 rupees. He has to pay 1 lakh rupees per month for first 2 months, and double that means 2 lakhs rupees. So it will be very expensive for the tenant. So this is also a very important aspect, and that guarantees to the property owner also, as far as the tenant is ready to observe the terms and conditions of the contract of rent or tenancy, he should not be worried about. Another most aspect where the current under the current present controlling rent act, most of the disputes are about change of name when the tenant expires. We call it successor. Under the amended, the suggested Model Tenancy Act, the successor of the owner as well as the successors of the tenant, both are within the purview of the provisions when a property owner expires, his legal heir, his successor, and when the tenant expires, his legal heir and his successor will be bound by the agreement, contract. Say, for example, if the contract is for 2 years and in the midway the tenant expires, then his legal heir will step into his shoes and they will have to pay the rent and maintain the properties and etc. Another aspect in which under the present law there is a huge litigation like the previous one is subletting of the property. Under the present law, the subletting of the property is not allowed, point blank. Under the model law, it is open to the parties to provide within the contract itself that tenant will be able to sublet or not sublet. He will be able to sublet without giving notice to the owner or what, whether he'll be able to sublet with whatever rent. If nothing is mentioned in the agreement, then also it is possible for the tenant to sublet by written consent of the owner. The only condition is that in that case, he cannot take the rent higher than the one which he is paying to the landowner, property owner. Going further, like the tenancy, another most important part is the rent. The agreement between the landowner and the tenant has to mention very clearly as to what will the rent. Not only that, when the revision of the rent will take place, the methodology and calculation of the increase of the rent can also be part of the agreement. However, if nothing is mentioned about revision of the rent, then in that case, it is open to tenant. It is rather open to the landowner to send a notice to the tenant, 3 months notice, that I would like to increase my rent by such and such amount. If you are not agreeable, please vacate. If the tenant fails to vacate or fails to communicate, then in that case, the tenancies shall be deemed to have been continued on the revised term as per the notice given by the owner of the property. To take care of these aspects while drafting also and using the if the tenant wants to vacate the premises before the completion of the terms of the tenancy, or even though there is no completion of terms of tenancy, or even after completion of tenancy, if he has continued within the period of 6 months or extended period, if he fails to give the notice of the termination, then again he is inviting the problem of deemed extension of the tenancy. Then the rent authority will be the only adjudicating authority at the lowest level to whom the tenant or the landowner will approach for ultimate adjudication as to whether the premises are to be vacated, tenancy will continue, what rent will be paid, or whether there will be revision of rent. As far as the revision of the rent is concerned, an application can be made by the owner also, as well as by the tenant also. Tenant will ask for revision at lower level, and the landlord will ask for the revision at the higher level. Both these persons can go to the court. There can be various factors for revision. I'll give one or two examples. Say, for example, after giving the property on rent, the landlord makes certain additions, improvements, and alterations which are not within Schedule 2 in his part. In that case, he will have a right to apply to the rent authority for upward revision of the rent, and the rent authority will have the jurisdiction to adjudicate this and order accordingly. The next very important aspect is security deposit. It has been specifically mentioned that for the residential premises, the security deposit will not be more than 2 months rent. And in case of commercial property, within this provision, you have to draft a document of rent and tenancy. This security deposit cannot be more than what has been prescribed. Say, for example, 2 months for the residence and minimum 1 month for the commercial. Now, coming to the last leg of our discussion about the obligations of the landowner and the tenant. This is also extremely important because, as I said, I'll repeat once again that the contract is very important. The obligations of the landlord tenants are also there to be in the agreement of the contract only. Like the terms of tenancy, terms of rent, renewal of tenancy, vacating the premises, who will maintain, all these aspects are covered under the Contract Act. Likewise, the obligation of the landowner, the tenants are also to be completely covered in the contract itself. The first of all, friend, okay, before coming to this, one important aspect which remains is, see, Schedule 2, the Model Act specifies as to what will be repaid and conditions by the owner and what will be repaid and conditioned by the tenant. The schedule is very clear. Even we can understand that by and large it is rational and proper. Say, for example, the structure repair, which we now understand, whitewashing the premises, painting of the premises, changing the plumbing system and external electrical wiring and internal electrical wiring. These are the domain of the landowner. Whereas the regular maintenance kind of thing, switches, bulbs, tubes, draining system, water closet, all these are part of the repairing, which is the responsibility of the tenant. If the tenant repairs something more than what is he's required to do under the contract or under the schedule, then he will have a right to ask for adjustment of the payment against the rent. Likewise, if the landlord has repaired something which is not done by the, which is within the purview of the tenant, and the landlord repairs it, then in that case, he will have a right for upward revision or the additional payment or reimbursement of expenses for which both these persons, the owner and the tenant, have to approach the rent authority. Coming back to the slide, once the agreement is signed by both the parties, duly witnessed, under the present position, most of the time the rent agreement is not entered into or not given to the tenant. Here it is compulsory that one original signed copy, signed by both the persons, tenant and the owner, has to be given to the tenant. Second, whenever the tenant makes a payment of rent, either to the landowner or to his manager, which is termed as a property manager under the provisions of the Act, then compulsorily a written receipt has to be given for such payment. And in case the landowner or the property manager of the landowner does not give the receipt, or he does not accept the rent, then unlike the present dispensation when we have to go for litigation immediately, under the model law, for 2 months, the tenant can send the rent by money order or by any other electronic mode as may be subsequently prescribed by the rules under the government, under the rules that may come. However, after 2 months also, the rent is not accepted, then the tenant has to deposit such rent with the rent authority, and the landlord will be at liberty to withdraw the amount from the rent authority. Now, when he withdraws the amount, he may withdraw a particular part of it as per the agreement. However, a withdrawal in itself cannot be taken a ground by the tenant that the landlord has accepted his terms and conditions. So this is also a safety of the landowner, that even he accepts, he does not accept the terms and conditions of the, as may have been suggested by the tenant. In the agreement itself, the common utility among, say for example, entire building is tenanted, entire building. Then in that case, it is open to the parties to mention in the agreement of the contract itself as to what are the utilities for which the tenant has to separately pay, what are the common utilities and the common facilities for which the tenant has to pay separately. So this has to be again as per the agreement. Then, as I said just now, brush to the schedule 2 to the model provision. Part A and Part B mean for owner and the tenant respectively. If they respectively fail to do or perform their part, then the other party will be able to do it and recover the expenses from the other side who was responsible. And for adjudication of any difference or dispute in this regard, they can approach the rent authority. Coming to the repossession of the premises by landowner, because that is the main contention litigation part as of today in the courts, is when the landlord wants to repossess the property on expiry of the term of the contract. Under the model law, it will be very easy. It will be as per the contract between the parties. And the adjudicating authority will also immediately pass an order, and there will be no scope for 20-25 years in the civil code. As far as the tenancy continues under the terms of the contract between the two parties, eviction of tenant will not be possible under any circumstances unless the terms of eviction midway have been very clearly specified in the contract, and therefore there is a surety to the tenant that he will not be on the road if he is ready to perform his part of the contract as per the terms and conditions. However, if the owner is of the opinion that the tenant is misusing the premises, then at any point of time, irrespective of the terms of the contract, he can approach the authority for an order for eviction of the tenant. Now, it is very important for us to understand what is the misuse. See, the misuse is defined very clearly under the provisions. If any activities which are, I'll just go through that provision. What is? Yeah, misusing means encroachment of additional space by the tenant, use of premises which causes public nuisance or causes damage to the property or is detrimental to the interest of the landowner or for immoral and illegal purposes. For these purposes, during the continuance of the terms of the contract also, the authorities will be able to pass the order of eviction. In this regard, at present, provisions and the adjudication is very long drawn legal process, and therefore this is also a very important provision. Another important part under the present dispensation, it is not easy for the landowner or the owner of the property to get the property vacated if he wants to repair it, if he wants to make some additional construction. Say for example, if certain construction is necessary for the landowner to safeguard his property, then under the present provision, it is not easy for the landowner to get the property vacated. Under the present, the model law, it will be possible for the landowner to get the possession of the property back from the tenant by approaching the rent authority, who will see that it is a genuine requirement of the landowner. He has got the plan ready for repair. He has got the contract and everything ready, and then he will pass the. However, during this period of vacating the property, if the tenants face, even after the order or notice or agreement, then he'll have to face the consequences. And the consequences, as I said, are very harsh. That is for first 2 months, double the rent, and subsequent 4 months, 4 times the rent. Say, for example, in an entire rented building, there is a plot of land which is vacant, on which there is no construction. And that is also part of the renting agreement. If the landowner wants to develop that particular part after getting FSI or under the new revised DC rules or whatever reason, if he is able to construct, then under the present law, it is very difficult for him to get the construction, get the property vacated. However, under there is a specific provision that the rent authority has been given power to pass an order of severance of the land for permitting additional construction. But for that, the precondition is that the plans have to be ready, the landowner has to be really ready for starting the construction. Otherwise, he will not be able to get the order. So severance of the land for permitted residential construction is a very important thing. This is also an assurance to the landowner that he will not face any problem for security and repossession of his property. Another totally new factor is possession on determination of interest of the landowner. Say, for example, for some reason, for any reason rather, if interest of the landowner is determined in any property, then that itself will be a reason for him to approach the authority to get an order for termination of the tenancy and for eviction of the tenant. Tenant's notice to give possession. This is a part of that process only. If that under the contract, if the tenant is eligible to get the possession of the property for the purpose of, if he is ready to perform his part of the contract, then the adjudicating authority will definitely pass an order in that regard. Now, having understood almost all the aspects in nutshell about the Modern Tenancy Act, friends, the questions are: what happens to the present tenancies? What happens to the present leases? And what happens to the present leave-in license agreement? In this regard, there is complete clarity as far as the new law is concerned, because the new law is totally applicable all the contract only after enactment of the law. Means there is no retrospective application, and therefore the present tenancies, present leases under the Transfer of Property Act, as well as present leave-in license will not be affected by the new law. There is no provision also for these things to be covered under the provisions of the modern new law. Unless, say for example, presently there is a tenancy, if they want to cover, they have to get out of it and enter into new contract. As far as leave-in license, friend, is concerned, in the last lecture where the same my co-speaker was there, Vipul Shah, we are analyzing in detail the difference between leave-in license and the tenancy. Leave-in license is a kind of license given. No interest in the property is given to the licensee. It is for the limited purpose. That purpose will be for the residence. For purpose will be for doing some work. The purpose will be for redevelopment of property. By and large, as we understand, leave-in license is that we give the property for residence, and for the purpose of that license, he is allowed to enter our flat, but he doesn't have any interest in the property. These documents will not have any effect. It will not be affected by the Modern Tenancy Act. However, let me draw your attention that under the Maharashtra Rent Control Act, Section 24 is there, which gives a protection to the flat owner and the leave-in licensee also to approach that authority for various remedies as per the leave-in license agreement. If the new law is adopted by the state government and that kind of provisions equal to Section 24 are not enacted, then all these cases have to go to the civil court with long drawn litigation process. Friends, with this I have tried to analyze the provisions in the context of the present law as well as the aim and object of the new law. Thank you, friends. I'll be attending to any questions on this topic when we come to question answers. Thank you.
I think that's
Thank you, Mr. Sutar. Thank you, Dr. Sutar.
Sorry, Sandeep.
Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. May I now request Siddhant Bide to introduce the next speaker, Advocate Vipul Shah.
Okay. So after a really enlightening session by Rotarian Hiralal Sutar, we have our next speaker, Mr. Vipul Shah, Vipul Shah is a commerce graduate, a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, and a Bachelor of Law from the Mumbai University. He started his career as a practicing CA in the year 1996 and as a proprietor of Messrs. BJS and Associates. And because of his profound passion in the legal field, he is now practicing as an advocate in the Bombay High Court. His core specialization is in the matters relating to direct access, real estate industry, and succession. We welcome Vipul Shah ji, and he will be enlightening us on the presentation on the structure of the dispute resolution. Vipul Shah ji, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning all. Today's host and past President Shri Aslam Merchant ji, past President Shri Anand Gupta ji, President Dr. Manoj Patel ji, Rotarian President Shri Gautam Chande ji, Dharmendra Sharma ji, Siddhant Bide, Rotarian Apurva Gangar, MSW President Ramesh Prabhu ji, and my co-speaker Hiralal ji Sudhar, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I thank you very much, the Rotary Club of Bombay West, for giving me an opportunity to share my knowledge on the proposed Model Tenancy Act 2019, which is gaining attention of people nowadays, mainly with respect to the shift of government from the regulatory regime to control-free regime. The core and basic fundamental difference between the earlier model tenancy law and this law is now the entire contract between the landlord and the tenant is based on the agreement between them. Earlier on, the pagdi was not, it was illegal. Subsequent to that, in 1999, pagdi has been made legal. However, still the rent is controlled by the Rent Control Act. So it's a major big shift from that control regime to a free regime. I have made a small presentation on this topic for the day. I'll just share it with you. Yeah. Mainly, I will be dealing with the structure of dispute resolution under Model Tenancy Act. Basically, this act has been established, made and established for appointing a rent authority for regulating renting of premises in an efficient and transparent manner, and to balance the interest of owner and tenant by establishing adjudicating mechanism for speedy dispute redressal and establish rent court, rent tribunal to hear appeals and for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. See, basically, presently the situation is rent control, all the dispute related to owner and tenant is governed, and the jurisdiction lies with the small causes court. Now, here in this case, the government has proposed 3-tier resolution system. One, the very primary authority is the rent authority. Subsequent to that, the appellate authority is rent court, and the final appellate authority is rent tribunal. It has been very specifically mentioned that there has been no jurisdiction of any other civil code except for the rent code or rent authority with respect to the dispute between landowner and tenant. So wherever there is a dispute between the landowner and tenant with respect to the amount of rent or a possession or a maintenance, all those would be governed strictly under the new proposed law, and no other civil court will have jurisdiction over it. The jurisdiction of rent court will be limited to only the tenancy agreement, and it is submitted to it as per the first schedule in the question of title of ownership, and premises shall be beyond its jurisdiction. In many cases, the disputes between the landlord and tenant are with respect to the title also, and mainly with respect to the tenant, the succession, that the title will go to whom. Like suppose in present case, the tenant, on the death of a tenant, who will inherit his right. That is the biggest problem, and the landlord always never transfer their tenancy to the legal heirs. So all those type of disputes are there. Mainly those have been plugged here by making a very specific mention. And otherwise, any dispute related to the tenant and landowner will be adjudicated by this court. Very important aspect about this particular act is everything is time bound. Now we know that in India we have a system of tariq pe tariq, and people get fed up with litigation. So now a big shift in this act is all the proceedings are made time bound, and there has been a time specified in the law that within particular number of days the decision should come. And in case there has been a delay, the concerned authority is duty bound to record the reason for the delay in writing. As I said, there is a three-tier resolution mechanism. First is a rent authority. I am just sharing this, that who would be the authority, just for a general understanding. Here the rent authority is a very preliminary authority which has a summary power, and that will be also an officer of a deputy, rank of a deputy collector, which is an administrative body. There is no judicial body involved at the rent authority level. All the orders passed by rent authority are appealable, and that can be appealed before the rent court. Rent court consists of two members. One will be appointed by state and in consultation with High Court. So, and one is from the state judiciary. So both would be a member for judicial background. Rent tribunal will have three members: principal appellate member and two other judicial members from the state services. So it has been an experience in India that the tribunalization has been ineffective. Like in this case, generally a civil court earlier had a jurisdiction. Here it has been made that the tribunal will have a final jurisdiction. So there are many tribunals like the Industrial Dispute Tribunal, Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, Excise Tribunal. So it is now flat is a NCLT. In the RERA there is a tribunal. So it is an understanding of the government that if there is a specific tribunal set up which deals with the disputes related to a particular nature only, the resolution is also fast, and it effectively resolves the issues between the people. But the only drawback in those tribunals is about the appointment of less number of judicial people, or having a combination of a judicial and a technical member and all. So it seems that in this case, considering the earlier remarks of Supreme Court in some of the judgment, the government is planning to have judicial members in rent court and rent tribunal to effectively deal with the problems. The nature of proceedings between the three authorities would be like this. Rent authority, the proceedings will be summary proceedings. Summary proceedings are still different than the normal court proceedings, because in summary proceedings it does not involve a lot of the procedural part. Based on the document, the authority decides what is the situation. Like in check bouncing cases, 138 is there, which is a summary proceeding. There it doesn't go beyond a particular level of documentation. Once the check is issued, if it is bound, there is an offense. There is no other explanation to be given. Similarly, in summary proceedings also, in case of this tenancy also, as Sutharji mentioned, the agreement is the most important document in this entire proceeding. If in the agreement it is mentioned that the tenant will vacate the premises after 12 months, then he has to vacate the premises. There is no other option with respect to any defense by the tenant. So it would be a summary proceeding. However, a safeguard is also provided that if suppose there is some injustice has been done in summary proceedings, then there is an appellate mechanism available before the rent court. Rent court has got both the jurisdiction and original jurisdiction also. Some issues could be before the rent court and as an original jurisdiction, and some would be the appellate proceedings. So appellate proceeding would be the order which was passed by the rent authority would be challenged before the appellate proceedings. After appellate proceedings, all the order passed by appellate proceedings, that is the rent code, if the person is still aggrieved, there is a second level of appellate proceedings, that is rent tribunal. Rent tribunal will be having the appellate jurisdiction only, and all the orders passed by rent code would be available before rent tribunal. And the rent tribunal is the final authority. There is nothing beyond rent tribunal as an appellate proceeding. In case the person is aggrieved with respect to some violation of fundamental right or something, then there is a writ jurisdiction, which is a general jurisdiction available before the High Court. So in this three-tier jurisdiction, three-tier mechanism, the problem would be solved. And in all the three-tier mechanisms, there has been a number of days specified that within how many days the issue should be resolved. Another aspect of this dispute resolution is in India, for civil courts are governed by the Code of Civil Procedure, where there has been a laid down procedure is there, where people have to follow that procedure for the disposal of or at the time of their case. In this tribunal and rent code, they are not bound by the procedure laid down by Code of Civil Procedure. However, they have been given specific power with respect to enforcing attendance, verification of document, inspection of site, appointment of commission, etc. The procedure for filing the application is as under. Every application which is filed before the authority would be with the affidavit. The basic concept is whenever person is affirming on affidavit, he is affirming on oath. So any wrong statement given in the affidavit is a criminal offense. So a safeguard has been kept here that to avoid frivolous applications or an application with a wrong fact or with a malified intention, to avoid that, every application must be with an affidavit. As soon as that application is filed, rent court or rent tribunal issues notice to the other party. Here also it is provided that the other party should file his reply with affidavit and document. So he also cannot take it for a right that anything can be replied to the application file. So he has also to give his reply under affidavit along with the document on which he is relying. One more opportunity is given to the applicant to file his rejoinder. So suppose you have filed an application, the other party has contended that what I am saying in my application is not correct. And as an applicant, if I want to further say something on that, so then I have been given a chance of rejoinder. Once rejoinder is filed, a personal hearing is conducted. And during the hearing also, the proceedings will be a summary inquiry based on the document which is submitted. And during that hearing proceedings, if the authority or the court or the tribunal is of the opinion that attendance of some witness is required or a cross-examination of witness is required, the court can allow that witness and cross-examination also. It is provided in the act that they would make a standard form for filing an application and also for filing an appeal, so that there would be a standardization, because generally nowadays there is a trend in judiciary that we advocates ourselves, we file very lengthy claims and applications and all, which runs into quite a number of pages. To avoid that, they have decided to have some standardized application form wherein the issues would be mentioned and what is the resolution is the person applicant is seeking for. So this would be good. This has been done in the RERA tribunal also and in NCLT also. They have a standard format. You have to fill up the query and your dispute in that format, and your prayer also should be mentioned in brief to avoid huge data. As I said, the entire procedure is time based, and generally it has been seen that the matter gets delayed because either party keeps asking for adjournment. So here very specifically provided in the act that court or tribunal shall not ordinarily grant more than 3 adjournments. Maximum adjournment can be granted is 3 because the time limit has been given. So otherwise it will keep on, people keep on applying for adjournment and matter goes on for years together. So to avoid that, it has been physically provided. However, if any additional adjournment is given for a circumstances beyond control, something like, suppose like now this COVID is there, from last almost 7-8 months, the courts are not functioning. During such period, if there is something which is beyond control and some adjournments are required to be given, in that case, the adjournment can be given with a reasonable cost. Of course, not for the COVID thing, but similar such adjournments are by the either of the party, there would be some cost involved. It is been provided that the case should be disposed of within a period of 60 days from the date of application. So there is a specific time limit given in the act that it should be disposed of within a 60 days period, and the procedure that earlier reply and rejoinder, whatever has been mentioned here, has to be complied within this particular period. In case the decision cannot be taken in 60 days, in that event, a reason should be recorded in writing. Now, see, this is a provision made in the act, right? So as a citizen, we have a right. Generally, it is seen that though the intent is there in the act that the resolution should be time bound, but it takes quite number of years, right? Like the live example is RERA. In RERA also, the act has provided, legislature has provided that there should be a time bound resolution. However, it has been seen that the resolution, the getting hearing for the complaint only takes 4 to 6 months. So, but in all such events, there has to be a reason recorded in writing. So, a aggrieved party has a right; they can apply to the court or an authority and ask, kindly give us a copy of the reasons which have been recorded and why this resolution, why this complaint has not been disposed of within the specified date. There has been a time limit mentioned for the repossession of premises also, and it is from the 90 days from the date of filing of application. There are many reasons why the repossession can be required by the landowner, and there the time limit is given in 90 days, wherein in the present cases it remains, it goes for years together, maybe generations actually. So that time limit is there. There is another in there, there is an exception that if the repossession is for the misuse, as Tutharji mentioned, what is called as misuse. For misuse, there is a provision that the landowner should give an intimation to the tenant that you are misusing the premises than the purpose for which I have given, and you should stop it immediately. However, he doesn't stop the misuse of the premises, then the landowner can make an application and that repossession should be given within the period of 30 days. So there the period of 90 days is also not applicable. Within the period of 30 days, that application should be resolved. There are some inherent powers given to the court also for the purpose of inquiry, power to enter and inspect premises. There is a very specific power given to the court. Sometimes what happens, suppose there is a complaint with respect to unauthorized construction in the premises which is given on rent. And if court is of the opinion that it requires some physical inspection to go at the site and check, then court has been given a power. It can appoint an officer who can go to that particular premises and make a report and give it to the court. Court can also call for the inspections of books and documents if during the course of proceeding it is required. There is another power to appoint assessor, valuer, or advisor. This would be, in my opinion, could be a cases where there has been some expenditure incurred by the tenant, and it has been provided that it can adjust it out of the rent payable to the landowner. And if that amount is disproportionate, then in that event, the court may appoint some assessor or valuer to go and value that the cost incurred by the tenant. The rent court has been given a power of judicial magistrate of first class for the recovery of fine under the provision of Code of Criminal Procedure, and the rent court shall be deemed to be a magistrate under the state court for the purpose of recovery. This is very important power given to the court, and there is no separate institution of suit required. I think this could be mainly with respect to, suppose you have given the check, the tenant has given a check for the rent, and that check is bounced. So normally you have a mechanism available under Criminal Procedure 138. I think this section is very material to that, so you can, the court itself has the power to do that, to take an action on that. the court has been given a power to execute its order as per the decree of civil court. And while executing the order, rent court can deliver what, suppose the order has been passed that the possession should be handed over to the landowner. And for execution of such order, court has a power to give the possession in case there is an order with respect to payment of rent, outstanding rent. Then court has a power to attach bank account. And for executing its order, court can take the help of the police or a local body like municipality and all. And of course, only in this case, in the case of taking help from the police, the cost of police is to be borne by the applicant. But you don't have to go again to a third party for execution. Like in RERA, there are huge number of orders passed against the builders. But it has been a trend that almost more than 90% of the orders are not executed only because the RERA doesn't have an execution power. Execution actually is done by the collector office. So a person then again after that order run to the collector office and get that order executed. So here in this case, to avoid such things, the power has been given directly to the rent court only for granting possession and attaching bank account also. There is also a provision made, time-bound provision for execution proceedings to be completed in summary manner within 30 days. So at the time of execution, there is no other proceedings to be carried out, and the entire proceeding should be completed within the period of 30 days. Appeal before tribunal. These are the, as I said, that the decision given by the rent court, or the order given by the rent court is appealable before the tribunal. And here also the time-bound procedure is that the order passed by the rent court can be appealed against the rent tribunal within a period of 30 days from the date of final order. Tribunal should serve notice on the respondent and fix hearing within 30 days of the service of notice of the appeal on the respondent. Tribunal should dispose of the appeal within a period of 120 days. So here also there is a time limit with respect to service of the notice and also with respect to completing the appellate proceeding. And within 120 days from the date of service of notice, the proceeding should be completed. Here in this case, tribunal has been given a special power to allow and accept some document. Suppose during the lower court proceedings, you have not been able to provide certain document which you feel is important to establish your case, then in that case, tribunal has been given a power to allow document. But this power is only can be used once, and a person can have an opportunity to submit document only once. Tribunal also has been given power to pass interlocutory order. So till the time that final hearing is there and tribunal feels that in the immediate interest of the appellant some order is required to be passed, then it has a power to pass interim order. Court fees, there is a fees payable on filing suit in the rent court, application in the rent court, rent tribunal and the authorities. And for the purpose of that, court fees at 1870 would be applicable. Like in RERA, suppose there is a standard fees of 5,000 rupees for filing a complaint. There is no such provision here. Here the court fees would be as per the Court Fees Act, which is applicable. As mentioned by Sudarji, all earlier proceedings would continue under the old act. So there is, it is not that this act has a retrospective effect. It will be applicable prospectively. However, the act has given an option to the plaintiff. Suppose somebody has filed a case in the notorious court in the current Maharashtra Rent Control Act, and if he decides that he wants to get this particular dispute adjudicated under the new act, he has been given a time limit of 180 days. From the commencement of that, he can take a decision whether he wants to continue under the old regime or wants to get the benefit of the new regime. And once he decides that he wants to come under the new regime, he has to withdraw the suit filed in the under the old suit, and within 270 days he should file the suit within the under the new law. And if it is filed within that time, it will be a compliance of the requirement. I think with the time allotted to me, I have tried to give a broad outlook at how the entire proceedings would work. And if any questions are there, we can take up at that point of time.
Yeah, so there are certain questions. I would read it out for your convenience.
Yeah.
So there is one question from Nikita Modi ji that the premises to which it is applicable, this Tenancy Act. This question was addressed to Hiralal ji. Hello.
Yeah, Dharmendra.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can ask the questions from the chat box to the speakers.
Yeah. So the first question was asked here by Nikita Modi that premises to which it is applicable this Tenancy Act. So she has not specified the what premises, maybe the commercial or residential she is talking about.
Hiralaji, unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it is applicable to residential and commercial purposes only, not for industrial purpose.
Okay. The another question was from my side only, that whether the rent increase can be in any proportion, as you mentioned that the
Got it.
revision of rent
Yeah.
can be done.
I got it, Dharmendra. See,
Yeah.
as far as the rent is concerned, it is very clearly stated that the agreement is very important, the contract between the parties. If there is no specification in the contract, then the matter can go to the adjudicating authority, that is the rent authority. However, rent authority will only revise if it is due on account of certain expenses incurred by the owner for improvement of the property, not otherwise. Under the present law, standard rent provisions are there. This kind of authority is not given to the adjudicating authority. So there is no question of proportion otherwise. It is all methodology, and the terms and conditions are as per the contract between the parties for increase of the rent or revision of the rent. It is very clear.
Okay, like in the case, like as legal here has actually taken the position of after the demise of elderly, and the landlord and tenant relationship has been established, and they have been exchanged the rent receipts and all also, though
Yes.
there is no agreement in place, like in the where the actual rent is in the vicinity is 2 lakh or 5 lakh rupees, the person is paying 2,000 rupees kind of. So in that scenario.
See, I tell you, you are referring to the present position of the law, where we are approaching the landlord for change of the rent receipt. Under the these model provisions, the successors are bound by the agreement. If they want to get out of it, in terms of the contract only, they have to go ahead and send a notice for vacating or terminating the contract. That also in terms of the contract only. So there is, even though it is the owner or the tenant expires within the contracted period, the provisions of the contract are applicable to legal heir or successor of both of them. There is nothing like change of rent receipt or anything. Even they get the properties, for example, I gave the example, 2 years period is over, the contract will be over and the premises have to be vacated. So there is nothing like changing the rent receipt in the name of the legal heir under the model provisions.
Another question is there from Dilip ji, that what will be situation in case of redevelopment because of dilapidated building. After redevelopment, it will be ownership or same as tenanted premises in case of MCGM on the property.
See, you are referring to the tenanted premises being redeveloped by the landlord. Now, this particular aspect has nothing to do with the model law. Conversion of tenancy into proprietary concern is a totally different issue. It had nothing to do with the, see, this particular law governs the rented houses, rented properties. If the tenancy is under the old provision of the current dispensation, that is a Rent Control Act, 1999, then in that case, the conversion of the redeveloped property is not covered by this law. Normally, when the rented building is developed, the present tenant get conversion of their right into ownership right.
The next question is
Hello,
the
Dharmendra.
revision of notice of 3 months for increase in rent. Please elaborate.
See, I have specified that the revision of the rent is governed by the contract only. But say, for example, if there is no contract or there is no clauses with reference to the revision upward or downward of the rent, then in that case, the revision can be asked for by the owner on the basis of the fact that he has made some additional expenses or additional improvement in the property. On that basis, they can ask for the revision. Otherwise, as far as the contract of tenancy is concerned, when the contract is for a fixed period, within that fixed period, rent cannot be increased unless it is specified in the agreement itself. There is no provision, there is no scope of increasing the rent or revision upward or downward at the instance of owner or the tenant. If it is a fixed term tenancy and the terms of increase or decrease are specifically mentioned, including the methodology in the contract itself. No, anytime asking for increase in the rent, like the standard rent provision under the current laws.
The next question is on the
clear?
death of.
Yeah, Dharmendra.
Yeah. So the next question is on the death of tenant, legal heir is only married daughter and not son. Then what will be the situation?
See, daughters are legal heir of class 1 under the Hindu Succession Act if they are Hindus. When there is no other relative of class 1 except the daughters, they are the legal heir of the deceased and they are entitled to all the properties. In fact, let me tell you, in absence of a will or testamentary documentation by the deceased, all the properties of the deceased gets vested into his legal heirs automatically on his demise. Equally in all the legal heirs of class 1. Now daughter is class 1, mother is class 1, father is not class 1, wife and children are class 1. So this is how it happens.
Okay. The another question here is maximum up to how many months leave and license agreement to be made according to new model tenancy act. Beyond 5 years, is it allowed?
See, let me tell you, this is what I specifically mentioned because I was in the last slide. In the last slide, what I said, we are normally misunderstanding the leave and license with the rent. Here we are talking of the contract of tenancy, rent agreement, wherein the tenant gets the interest in the property by way of his right to stay in the property. There in leave and license, no interest is given in the property because he has been permitted to use your premises as a residence. He is allowed to enter your place. I'll give the example, another example, totally different example for clarity. If your plot is being redeveloped, the builder is allowed to enter your property, not because he has been rented that property, but because he has to carry out your contract of construction. So for the limited of contract of construction, he is allowed to enter. If it is not clear, I can give another example. Say for example, in a farm, you have a pond and there is you allow someone to fish in the pond. So for the purpose of fishing, he is allowed to enter your plot, not for other purposes. So this is a license which should not be mixed up with the rent. And this law does not cover any aspect of leave and license. I hope it is clear.
Yeah, thank you. The next question is from Anandji. Vipulji, if you would like to respond, if proposed model rent control act is approved and also adopted by Maharashtra government, then what happens to tenants staying in 14,250 SAS repair board buildings? Whether they will still continue to be protected?
See, as I said, it's a big change from control regime to free regime. And if an event that the law is accepted as it is by the Maharashtra government, then definitely the future of those people would be a question mark. Again, as mentioned by Sudhar, that this law does not apply to the government authority. So this law is not applicable to them. However, they have been given an option that if they want to get covered, they have to make a specific application and get themselves covered. So, but I think considering the amount of tenant which we have in that old state building and all, definitely Maharashtra government would come out with some exception with respect to them. And probably Ramesh Prabhuji could throw some light on this because he's generally in contact with the government authorities. What is the mood of Maharashtra government with respect to adopting this particular law? So as far as I understand, if the law is adopted as it is, then definitely this future of them would be at risk.
So whether Ramesh Prabhuji would like to throw some light on this?
Ramesh Prabhu is logged out.
Acha, okay.
Anand, you like to add anything here?
Yeah, definitely I would like to add. See, friends, we may be having a lot of sympathy and love and affection for this, all the people who are staying in 14,250 buildings. But remember, whatever slum has come in Mumbai, it is because of this faulty road rent control act only. Now this is a high time that in case we really want housing for all in the whole country, and we really want that people should have a free house on rental basis, then this model rent control act has to be approved and even adopted by government of Maharashtra. This is what particularly we from as an industry would like to say, because it may harm few people at random. But even we have to remember that they have not put any money to buy this house. They have got just inherited by because of this faulty rule. So this thought process in the all citizen of the country has to go. Without that, we can't get a house for all. This is what in short I want to say.
Okay, thank you. Acha, I think next question is a repetition of the previous one, but I read it out. This question asked by Mahesh Sawant. Sir, what happens to the tenants staying on Pagdi system for more than 60 years? Does the act protect such tenants? What is the proposed act against such tenants? I think the same.
This law is retrospective.
This is already
not retrospective. It is a prospective. People might
It depends on how government is taking it actually. So suppose somebody is already governed under the old act and he doesn't want to get covered under the new act, it would not be. And this is basically this is a draft model. In fact, the similar act is now prevailing in Tamil Nadu and Rajasthan. So they have this rent authority, rent code, rent tribunal. So it is already in place, but it depends how Maharashtra government is adopting it. Because there are lot many concerns or lot many issues to be decided by government before accepting any law. So it is purely subject to what is being enacted by the Maharashtra government. It is too premature to give any comment with respect to that. What would happen?
I will, Dharmendra, I would like to add that the law is prospective in nature and not the retrospective, and therefore all the old tenants in all these things are not subject to the provisions of this act. Unless the government comes out with amendment of the modern law, this model law, by adding certain, say for example, for leave license access 24 will be nullity. So that can be added. So that sort of thing, these amendments are introduced in different issue. Otherwise, this law is prospective in nature, absolutely not applicable to the old tenancies, absolutely not applicable to the government and municipal and BMC properties, absolutely not applicable to the religious and charitable trust properties.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
The next question is, the present online leave and license agreement consists terms and conditions mandatory. Can we do changes and add over certain terms and conditions?
This is the procedure for online registration of the document where limited changes are allowed. Let me tell you, this is an eyewash to fool the citizens. one need not go for online registration because that is not, you have to adhere to a certain draft. I am of the view that it is absolutely not possible for someone to adhere to the draft given by the department. It is a one-to-one case only, and you have to have your own terms and conditions, and therefore it is not advisable at all to go for this because just there is no scope for change in the terms and conditions. So please, I will not advise anyone to go for online registration of the leave and license agreement. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So the next question is from Dilip Ji. So far as title of tenanted property is concerned, it will as per Transfer of Property Act. He says that I think he will. It is not applicable to tenanted property.
See, again, there is a mix-up here. Transfer of Property Act is concerned with the leases and sale of the properties, gift of the properties, whereas the tenancies are governed by Maharashtra Rent Control Act 1999. So let us not mix up. In fact, because of these kind of lacunas in the drafting and the provisions of law, as I said, the issue of long drawn litigation arises. Let us not mix up.
Okay, thank you. The Captain Singh asks here, can a tenant under a very old tenancy act, say 60 years, of his premises, he mortgage for securing loan without consent of the landlord?
See, availing the loan against tenanted premises is out of question because the tenant has got, if it is the lease of the property, under the Transfer Property Act, there is a lease, there is a scope of getting the finance against the property. In case of tenancy, the tenant doesn't have the right to sublet, to transfer the tenancy, to wheel out the property, nothing. So there is no, I don't think, Captain, how is it that you could have obtained the loan securing the tenant, because tenancy is not a transferable right in the hands of the tenant. It is not willable right, not transferable right. There is no question. How the loan is given up to the cannot be understood.
I think these questions are over. If anybody would like to ask any other question, please go ahead. Oh, there is some other question has come, I think. No.
What happened to tenants who
What
has
happens to
no
tenants?
agreement or receipts by new purchase of property? What is this?
Mahesh ji writes that what happens to the tenants who has no agreement or receipts by the new purchaser of the property?
I think there is no clarity in the question. What does he want to say? Mr. Sawant, there is no
Mahesh Sawant, you may unmute yourself and ask the question.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, I'm referring to many such people living in Mumbai or Maharashtra who are there from more than 50, 60 years, who are, not, I'm not talking about these cooperative societies, but they are living in small chawls or they are living in groups where there was ownership. And these owners have sold their property to developers. Now, these developers have been not giving them rent receipt or there is no agreement. Now, do these developers have any upper right where, when this act comes, can they throw out the tenants or can they say that you all don't have any proof? Because these tenants may have old receipts of the rent.
Mr. Mahesh, let me clarify. The act which you analyzed today has nothing to do with the tenancies, old tenancies, collector and BMC and government properties. As far as you are concerned, that old charge system, if it was the tenancy is controlled by, previously it was controlled by 1947 Rent Act. Prior to that, it was controlled by 1925 Rent Act. And now it is controlled by Maharashtra Rent Control 1999. So whatever remedy is there for those tenancies within the provisions of the Rent Control Act, which is presently in vogue, and not the one which is in offing. So there is no remedy available under the proposed law. And again, let me tell you, the law needs to be enacted by the state government. The central government has suggested the draft only, if the state government is very serious in developing a segment of the industry, as Anandji wanted, and rightly so, then and then only the law will be enacted by the government, and that will benefit for having a totally different segment of industry. But your question cannot be answered within the provisions of the model law, Mr. Samant.
Yeah, Dharmendra, that's the end of the questions.
Yeah, there is another question here. What will be non-occupancy charges?
Yeah, non-occupancy charges, you have to refer to the circular. Say, what happened was in 1995, the circular was issued under 79A of the Maharashtra Corporate Societies Act. Later on, it was challenged in the court, in the single bench and the division bench, and it was turned down. The circular was reissued on 1st August 2001, which caps the service, the non-occupancy charges to 10% of the service charges. Now, mind where these service charges are not the maintenance bill. Service charges are those charges which are presently covered under bylaw number 66 of the Act, and not all the bills. So, these are capping of 10% on the service charges in the non-occupancy charges. Okay.
I think the questions are over, and even if somebody has questions, they can post in the group, so that can be addressed later. And over to Aslam bhai.
Thank you, Dharmendra, for handling this question and answer session so efficiently. May I now invite Rotarian Apurva Gangar to propose a formal vote of thanks. Apurva, all yours.
Thank you very much. And I think, it was a great session. So on behalf of the Rotary Club of Bombay West, I'd like to thank everyone who was present here for this session on the 30th Layman's Education Seminar. I know we are like 8 minutes on a delay, but I think it was a great Q&A round. So thank you, Rotarian Dharmendra Sharma, all the team that has been supporting at the back end, and absolutely the first and the foremost, the speakers who actually removed time today was, Shri Ramesh Prabhuji, Rotarian Hiralal Sutar, and Advocate Gokul Shah. A big thank you to you for spending your time with us and giving your analysis to everyone. Thanks to Aslamji, Siddhant, Gautam, Manoj, who have been here on the session. So thank you very much. And I hope that you guys benefit from the session and spread the word ahead. Thank you very much.